Good evening and welcome to The Law of a People and Governance here on Spectrum Television. This is a brand new week, and of course, this is a program that talks about government policies and government relationship with the people. It also serves as a bridge between the government and the people, explains government policies to the people, and of course, gets feedback back to the government. My name is Rachel David White. Of course, today we'll take a look at some reports that are trending today politically and of course on social issues. As long as Nigeria is concerned, there's so many issues and of course bordering around the survival and well-being of Nigerians as well. But the first report we're coming in with is starting from home here in Akwa Ibom State. Well, following the presentation of the list of commissioners and special advisors nominees to the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly for screening and confirmation, the Akwa Ibom State Governor, Pastor Omoina, says the list consists of those tasted and trusted to deliver on the mandate given to him by the Akwa Ibom people. And of course, Governor Ino made this explanation at the Victor Atta International Airport to Uyo shortly after his arrival from an official engagement outside the state. While allaying worries on his choice of lieutenant, the governor explained that while he would have to test the new hands before bringing them on board, it would not be fair to abandon those who supported and worked for his emergence. According to him, it was expedient that those who worked hard to interpret the vision of the immediate past administration should be given a chance to equally contribute to the success of the present administration. Well, he stated that the nominees are in a better position to interpret and carry out the arise agenda of his administration. And of course, our correspondent reporting for Government House had reported that the governor urged his people or the people of Akwa Ibom State to judge his decisions by the result and allow him to choose those he knows will work to deliver his promises to Akwa Ibom people. Don't forget that Pastor Omono had reappointed the former commissioners and of course special advisors who played the role of commissioners and special advisors during the past administration that was led by His Excellency Governor Odum Emmanuel. Well, in his words, he said, "I like new blood, but I must test the new blood and be sure that they are the right blood. You don't just take in blood, you must test the blood. So let's test the blood." He says, "By my training and upbringing, people don't go to a war with you and win the war and you push them aside. It is not a good thing to do because you will need them again for another battle and people won't trust you." He says, "So these guys went to war with me, they were with me in the trenches and we won. How do I reward them? Throw them away?" He says, "They have given me the job. Please, they should allow me choose those that I believe will deliver on the job. You can't give me a job and at the same time choose those that will work with me. I believe that choosing the people that will work with me to deliver on the job is my prerogative. Akwa Ibom should judge me on the deliverables." This has continued to stir up some negative reactions from some people here in Akwa Ibom State, feeling that it would have been, of course, another time for the governor to give fresh bloods, like he says, a try, and of course see what they have and the ideas they have, being that these ones had already contributed to the success of Akwa Ibom State during the past administration. There are also people who have better ideas and, of course, have better things to bring to the table. But the governor's choice and his word stands. So let's just watch and give him a chance, like he says, to deliver his good mandate to the people of Akwa Ibom State. All right, a quick one away from there. Let's get to what is happening all the way from Lagos State. Let's get to Lagos State and find out what is happening. Well, this is following the NSAS protest. Don't forget that I think for 2 years, if you want to count, that was 2020, October 20th, when some Nigerian youths took a walk around. It was a protest all across the nation to protest for end or to, ask the police or the government to bring an end to police brutality. And of course, fresh controversies have begun to thrill, of course, and after the video that leaked, or sorry, not a video, a statement, a leaked memo. It erupted after a leaked memo from the Lagos State government revealed that 103 NSAS victims have been lined up for a mass burial, and this triggered insinuations that those victims were the people that were allegedly killed at the Lekki Tollgate protest. Meanwhile, the Lagos State government issued a statement vehemently denying these insinuations met by the public. Well, report says the Lagos State government earmarked and approved 61.2 million naira for the mass burial of 103 NSAS victims. Now, the leaked memo has now raised eyebrows on whether these victims were the ones killed at the infamous Lekki Tollgate, of course, during the NSAS protest that the Lagos State government had vehemently denied on several occasions. As reported, the leaked memo had the signature of Olusegun Ogboye, Permanent Secretary of the Lagos Ministry of Health, and it was gathered that the contract for the mass burial had the signature of Onaforte Ido, Director General of the Lagos State Public Procurement Agency, and would be executed by the Messrs. TLS Funeral Limited. Now, the memo reads, following review of your request and based on the information provided therein, the agency has no objection to the onward of contract to Messrs. TOS Funeral Limited at a total cost of 61,285,000 naira only for the mass burial for the 103 the year 2020 NSAS victims. And the leaked memo has sparked mixed reactions from social activists, public affairs commentators, and of course netizens as well. Meanwhile, in another statement, the Lagos State government clearly stated that the 103 NSAS victims lined up for burial were not bodies recovered from the infamous Lekki Tollgate protests. Also, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State has ascribed as deliberate misinterpretation and sensationalization reports that he approved the mass burial of at least 103 protesters who were massacred by joint forces of the Nigerian Army and the police during the October 20, 2023 protest against police brutality tagged NSAS at the Lekki Tollgate. Well, according to a letter and dated July 19 by the Public Procurement Agency, the state government engaged the service of Messrs. TOS Funeral Limited, a private firm, and the government engaged the firm at the cost of 61,285,000 naira to bury 103 bodies which were identified to be victims of the killings. Now, the letter allegedly reads, following review of your request and based on the information provided therein, the agency has no objection to the award of contracts to Messrs. TOS Funerals Limited, a total of cost of 61,285,000 naira for the mass burial of the NSAS victims numbered 103. The viral letter has drawn reactions online, with many calling the former governor the governor and of course the former president Muhammadu Buhari and former army chief Tukur Buratai murderers. But in a swift reaction, in a statement on Sunday, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health, Dr. Olusegun Ogboye, says the attention of the Lagos State government has been drawn to some social media publications about a purported mass burial plan for casualties of the 2020 NSAS incidents. Peddlers of the news are deliberately misinterpreting and sensationalizing the letter from the Lagos State Government Public Procurement Agency titled Letter of No Objection. And of course, the letter is meant to misinform the public, according to that statement, stir public sentiment and cause public disaffection against the Lagos State Government. It says it is public knowledge rather that the year 2020 NSAS crisis that snowballed into violence in many parts of Lagos recorded casualties in different areas of the state and not from the Lekki Tollgate as being inferred in the mischievous publications. And it says, for the records, the Lagos State Environmental Health Unit, SEMO, picked up bodies in the aftermath of the NSAS violence and community clashes at Fagba Ketu, Ikorodu, Orile, Ajegunle, Abule, Egba, Ikeja, Ojota, Ekoro, Oba, Isholo, and Aja, areas of Lagos State, and said there was also a jailbreak at Ikoyi prison. The 103 casualties mentioned in the document were from these incidents and not from the local toll gates, as being alleged. For the avoidance of doubt, nobody was retrieved from the Lekki toll gates incident. It further read that contrary to the disingenuous narrative waved around the recently approved mass burial, the NSAS panels subpoenaed the Lagos State Chief Pathologist to produce full records of unclaimed bodies of dead deposited in the State Central Morgue during the days immediately after preceding and following the event at Lekki Tollgate on 20th October 2020. It says the list with their autopsies of provable cause of circumstances of death were duly submitted and testified before the panel. This subpoena was at the request of lawyers who represented NSAS protesters, and the chief pathologist complied. There was not a single finding in the report or ensuing white paper attributing the death of any named citizen listed in the autopsy to the Lekki incident. It says, in the aftermath of the NSAS violence, the Office of the Chief Coroner invited members of the public through public adverts and announcement on November 18th, 2020, in some newspapers who had lost loved ones or whose relative had been declared missing between 19th and 27th October 2020 from various clashes, as mentioned above, to contact the Department of Pathology and Forensic Medicine of the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital to help with identification of these casualties deposited in state-owned morgues. Relatives were to undergo DNA tests for identification purposes. It is important to state categorically that nobody responded to claim any of the bodies. Now, those were the letters or the words of the health chief who came out to debunk those stories, and of course the allegations that the 103 bodies were found at the Lekki toll gate. All right, that's it there. Let's move away from that and get to the main gist for the day, talking about cost of governance, talking about the president's palliative plan, and of course which all of this is being influenced by the hike in fuel price, which has been a major issue in Nigeria. Of course, don't forget that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on his inauguration day, May 29, during his inaugural speech and address, had said that fuel subsidy has been removed, and thereby causing a whole lot of issues for Nigerians. Of course, we had fuel being sold for 520 naira and above to, of course, as at last week, Tuesday, fuel was announced to be sold at 670 naira. So since then, this has been a serious issue for Nigerians, and of course that is what we are going to discuss today. So we'll go on a short break and we'll come right back. We'll talk about the cost of governance and palliative measures, and of course we'll even look at the fuel hike and of course its effect on Nigerians as well. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back.
which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
All right, welcome back. It's still the program, The Law of the People and Governance, here on Spectrum Television. And of course, we are about talking about something that has to do with me and you. As long as you are a living being in Nigeria, trust me, this one has to do with you. So we'll take a look at cost of governance, also take a look at the effect of fuel hike on the lives of Nigerians. And of course, these are the issues that we'll look at. I will be joined by our guest who is on standby waiting to join us. And of course, I have another co-host here in the house who will be joining me much later. But let's just take a look at the cost of governance a little, because last year, out of the country's 16.3 trillion budget, 6.8 trillion was spent on the payment of salaries and other personnel overheads. This year, the figure is higher, as of course 8.5 trillion of the 21.82 trillion budgeted would be spent paying salaries and allowances of public officers and other ancillary costs. still, the rising cost of governance is taking a huge position of the yearly budget, leaving behind peanuts for development projects. Well, during Buhari's 8 years in office, for instance, only 19.7% of the total budgetary spending, or 14.5 trillion, went into capital expenditure. That's the capex, much of which would end up in office equipment and, of course, sundry items. So the total capital expenditure outlay was less than half of the over 30 trillion deficit accumulated by the administration, according to facts filed from the official quarters. And the question is, can we continue like this? Sadly, within 8 years, 59.2 trillion was filtered on overheads, personnel costs, and other items of recurrent expenditure and debt servicing. Well, the African Development Bank had raised the alarm that the rising cost of debt service, which the World Bank said could surpass 100% of retained revenues, would crowd out investment in infrastructure needed to develop Africa. So a detailed analysis of Nigeria's 2023 budget shows that a total of 18.04 trillion naira is allocated to all government MDAs, with a total of 541 MDAs. Each MDA is estimated to receive about 33.27 billion naira. But in the 2023 budget, Nigeria is to spend 14.2 billion naira on the presidency alone, while the National Assembly has a budget of 228.1 billion. While former President Buhari, between 2016 and October last year, spent about 81.80 billion on the presidential air fleet, maintenance, and foreign trips. So the colossal figures included 62.47 billion naira for the operation and maintenance of course, those trips, 17.29 billion on foreign and local trips, and 2.04 billion earmarked for related expenses. And the presidency had maintained 10 aircraft since the inception of the Buhari regime in May 2015. Still under the Buhari's administration, the government created more agencies, including the Nigerian Diaspora Commission, the Northeast Development Commission, as well as the Nigeria Data Protection Bureau, amongst many others in 2020. While in 2020, the federal government had to borrow the sum of 2.8 trillion naira from the central bank via the Ways and Means provisions. Debt servicing gulped 3.2 trillion in the same year, while Nigeria spent a total of 5.6 trillion on recurrent non-debt expenditure in 2021. Now, the money was spent on personnel cost of MDAs, rising from the 2.8 billion in the 2020 budget to 3 billion naira in 2021 budget. And personnel costs for governance-owned enterprises also more than tripled from 218 billion in 2020 to 701 billion in 2021. What is worse is, as Nigerians are raising concerns over the bloated government spending, now the institution that ought to help check government spending, the National Assembly, has consistently increased its annual budget, as can be seen from the increase from 134 billion in 2022 budget to 169 billion under the 2023 budget. And they also just earmarked 70 billion naira in an amendment to the 819.5 billion 2022 supplementary budget as support to the working condition of new lawmakers. And this has been the attitude of the representatives of the people. They hardly understand the perilous times. So these are some of the issues that we are going to take a look at. The cost of governance, and of course, part of the palliative measures which the president said was to, of course, cut cost of governance. And there has been a review that we don't know yet how this is going to be, what it's going to look like. A review of the 8,000 naira monthly palliative that was supposed to go to 12 million vulnerable homes, most vulnerable homes in Nigeria. So this is what is going to form the basis of our discussion today on the program. So right about now, I'm about to bring in my co-host in the house. Welcome, Sylvia Roberts.
Thank you, Rachel. It's great to be on the show.
Of course, it's great to have you as well. All right, so let's quickly get to our guest who has been on standby to join us virtually in person of Mobulaji. He is a financial crime analyst. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so a quick one. Let's get into the details of the gist for today. Now, talking about, I know you are not in Nigeria, so you may not understand how hard it bites Nigerians. I know you may have relatives here, or you should, right, to cope with the recent hike in fuel price, all the way from 500 and I think 20 or 15 naira to 617 naira.
You know, even if you're not in Nigeria, you'd obviously have people who give you the information regarding the rising cost of living at home and how things are hard for the people at home. But I would like to maybe for the first time say that we should not oversimplify the economy and the problems facing the government as it is, because when we try to simplify, we just say because the cost of living is high, there's nothing the government should, or the government should have probably kept subsidy, because at the end of the day, subsidy was unsustainable for the Nigerian government. So the Nigerian government was stuck between a rock and a hard place about keeping subsidies, keep borrowing for subsidies, because the last government budgeted half year 3.6 remove it whilst they were in office. So the budget for half year, knowing that we're going to live in May, that meant that for any government that was going to come, was either going to get a supplementary budget to keep funding the subsidy regime or eliminate it in its entirety. Now, we had the 21 trillion naira budget last year. For half year, it's 3.6 or thereabouts for subsidy. For a full year, it was going to be like 7 trillion. So if you're using 30%, like a third of your side, if you remove subsidy, which is a very sentimental issue in our economy because it deals with PMS, which fuels transportation, mobility, and power, energy source for people, you're going to, increase the cost of living for them, which is what is happening now. But then the government has to look at ways to bring in palliatives for people so that they can alleviate this cost of living that is, biting hard on the people.
Okay, now that brings me to cost of governance and of course the palliative plans that the president had initially for the people. Remember that the president had suggested or had proposed 500 billion naira as palliative measures, to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal on Nigerians, which had sparked so many reactions as to, the amount wasn't enough, and that was supposed to be, end up giving 12 million Nigerian homes 8,000 naira monthly. And now fuel had been increased, and just immediately after it was increased to 617, the president had said, ordered the immediate review of the 8,000 naira, and also he had said that away from the 8,000 naira, he had other palliative measures. It wasn't just the money, sending grains to, all the 36 states, including the Abuja as well. And of course, cutting cost of governance. So that brings us to cost of governance and of course, the National Social Register as well. The Anambra State Governor, Charles Soludo, had revealed that in Anambra State, it cost them before now what he inherited. It cost them about 137 million naira just to clean up public offices. Meanwhile, his own administration has reduced it to 11 million naira now. So take a look at cost of governance. Take a look at money that has been proposed for the 70 billion naira that the Senate had proposed for themselves to buy bulletproof cars, according to reports. So that brings us to cost of governance, because that is one of the major things to look at. Where can we get money to, even if the government wanted to, increase the money or the number of items on the palliative measures, cost of governance needs to be cost. This is one of the things, one of the major issues that we have here in Nigeria.
Well, I think if there's one thing every Nigerian has agreed on is that cost of governance has to reduce drastically, because we can't keep having overbloated budgets meant to take care of very few number of people. Meanwhile, the larger populace is at, they're suffering for whatever is going on. And that takes us back to the Orasmeye report that was brought out in 2012, right? There was recommendations cutting down on the number of MDAs, and some were meant to be merged, some were meant to be scrapped in their entirety. But also they noted that these reforms would have human dimensions and cost implications. Human dimensions in the fact that when you're merging or scrapping some MDAs in their entirety, some people will be let go.
Yeah.
Some redundancy would be made.
So merging them would have been a better option.
If you merge them, say for example, you have two directors of two different, maybe ministry or a directorate of government. Who do you make the higher director? Who do you make the lower director? So eventually it will still have human implications. So if you merge, because there are many duplicity, there's many duplicity going on in MDAs of government. So how do you have, so for example, the National Civil Defense Corps and the police, they're doing similar things, right? Meanwhile, we still have the Peace Corps bill in the National Assembly waiting for approval. So all these things are geared towards security. Meanwhile, you can merge all these things together and then have just one body taking care of all these singular activity. So the Orasmeye report is the way to go. And I think I've seen a policy document of the current President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that wants to implement the Orasmeye report. But then we have to also bear in mind that the human implication and the cost implication of all these things is going to mean there will be downsizing and there will be, redundancies. Then how would labor take these redundancies that come with implementing the Orasmeye report? So it's a very tight thing, but it needs to be discussed, if not for anything, for the optics of it, because you can't ask people to go on austerity measures and be living opulent in opulence, right? That takes me to what you said about the 70 billion and the 40 billion that the National Assembly members are planning to spend on bulletproof cars and renovating the National Assembly complex. I think that is insensitive on the part of Nigerians, because if you remember recently, the National Assembly complex was renovated. And why is another renovation going on? Why do we need to buy new bulletproof cars every 4 years? What about the returning members? What about the bulletproof cars you bought the last time? Why do you need new bulletproof cars? The older ones that you have, what's wrong with them? Are you going to dispose of them? So I think it's not even time to talk about the remuneration of the members of the National Assembly. What is your take home? How much are you taking home? What can be, done away with in this your take home? Because Nigerians are living in hard times, and we can't expect to live flamboyant lives in the face of austerity, and people are seeing you. In no time there will be upheaval, and people might even turn against the system and say, we can't continue living in austerity while you are living in opulence.
Yes, you're very correct. If I may chip in there, it's apparent that so far Nigerians have really suffered from the different events that have been happening in the country since the year began, from the cash crunch to fuel subsidy removal, diesel prices skyrocketing, and different experiences so far. What do you think is the reason a crop of leaders currently shy away from the discourse of cost of governance, cutting down on what they earn? Because I listened to Adams Oshomole, Senator Adams Oshomole now talking yesterday, and when the issues about the cost of governance, the National Assembly and what they earn came up, you could apparently see him stuttering. He wasn't able to tackle the questions head on. And we go back to President Tinubu, who was appealing to Nigerians to make sacrifices and endure that things were going to change. It begs for the question, how long are Nigerians going to be the ones making sacrifices? What are the sacrifices the leaders are making? Don't you think there is a pattern here that our leaders are not really concerned about what the common man is experiencing?
I agree with you. There's a discord between the governing and the governed. They don't understand the plight, or maybe they try to neglect the part of the citizens. Because if you look at it, when the president is asking for a renewal of the social contract between the governance and the governed, and you're seeing people here, just like about 500 of them, who are going to be sharing 110 billion naira. And you're asking the people, the bulk of 200 million people, I can even say 199,999,500 people, right? Asking them to go on austerity measures. Meanwhile, you are sharing this bulk of money, and it looks like something that keeps recurring every time. So at the end of the day, you push the people to the wall, right? And there might be a revolt at a point, because it can't keep going on this way. Like you said, Adams Oshomole could not defend the monies that they collect. And if you ask these people, because at the end of the day, their budget is a one-line item. Nobody looks at it. Nobody checks their budget to say, what are you people using these things for? So there comes a time in the history of the country where the people are looking at them and like, they would revolt and say, we can no longer take this. I'm part of an admonition, or let's say a citizen engagement platform that were gathering signatures for a petition that was submitted at the National Assembly today, right? So we are asking for clarification about the 70 billion and the 40 billion, why these things are needed and what they are needed for at this point in time, where you are asking the people to go on austerity measures. So there's citizen engagement going on regarding these 70 billion and 40 billion that the lawmakers are asking for. And I think the Nigerian populace can, toe this line. Even if it's not successful this time, if we keep doing it, I'm sure our leaders will listen to us at the point.
Okay, Mobolaji, oftentimes, when talking about palliative measures or palliative plans that the president has for Nigerians, at that same time we get to talk about National Social Register, okay, which of course the National Economic Council, the NEC, had faulted the National Social Register while deliberating on the palliative measures for Nigerians as well. But the question right now is, does Nigeria really have a credible National Social Register? Because if you have to share, if you have to share the palliatives, and then there are questions as to how do you find out the most vulnerable Nigerian homes? Yeah. What basis are you using to classify them? How do you get across to all of them? And that's when the National Social Register comes in. But does Nigeria really have a credible National Social Register?
Okay, I will divide my answer into two aspects, right?
Okay.
What is and what should be. What is that we have a National Social Register that was done bottom up. When I mean bottom up, it was Buhari administration, were part of the people that gathered the names of these people and submitted these names to make up the social register, right? And there's I think there's the NASCO. I've forgotten. I can remember the abbreviation, but I can't remember the full name.
National Social Safety Nets Coordinating Office, NASCO.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, in cooperation with the state government, they came up with this social register. Now, if these state governments are not coming to tell us that this social register that we have is faulty, then we should check what they did in the first place. Because it wasn't like the federal government went about gathering these names. You people came up with these names, submitted to the federal government, and then you're telling us that these names are faulty, or you have to censure this list. So it begs the question that what did you do in the first place? Now, what should be is that if we had a functional local government system, these names should have been gathered from the local government, ratified in the state before being submitted at the federal level, right? Because the local government are the closest to the people, so they can know the people with the locality and tell these are the vulnerable people, these are the poorest of the poor, and then ratify these names across all the local governments of each state, making 734 local governments across the federation, and submit to the federal level. But it goes back to the question of federalism. When you don't treat states as federating units where they have to come up with solutions based on the local governments that are within them, and coming up with solutions from the local level. I think Nigeria, we turn the head to the tail, and we start from from the tail rather than from the head. You get me? So this was meant to have been undertaken by the local government chairman across the 774 local governments of the federation, and ratified in the state before being submitted to the federal government rather. So I think the governors are now doing a disservice to the nation, and they are putting the limelight on themselves now, because if everybody is going to their state to create this social register, it means that Nigerians will hold their state government accountable for the names that are going to be on the list. We hope they are not going to be lackeys of the state governors. They are not going to be supporters of the state governors, right? And then these are credible names that can be verifiable by civil society organizations.
Okay, so to what extent do you think that these governors are misinformed when it still has to do with the National Social Register? Because I understand that NASCO did not just act on its own. The names that appear on that list were collated from the state level and submitted to the federal government, and they had specific procedures that they followed to ensure that they arrived at that
finding
list.
the most vulnerable.
Yes, so
Nigerians.
it was surprising for me to get to see how the former CBN governor, in the person of Charles Soludo, who is now the Anambra State governor, coming out to say all he said about the register, which happens to be a brainchild of previous governments, of governors, and he definitely was supposed to have ideas about what transpired and how these National Social Register was arrived at. And to what extent do you think that the issue of trust, the trust deficit that Nigerians have in our crop of leaders, has helped in bringing up different narratives and distrust for the National Register? Because I feel that Nigerians do not trust their leaders, and it is not the fault of the country's citizens, because over time the leaders have worked overtime trying to ensure that we lose trust in them. Do you think that is an issue of trust in the government of the country? Do you think that this has to do with the fact that Nigerians do not trust their leaders? That is why there is so much uproar concerning the National Social Register.
Whatever trust deficit that Nigerians have in their leaders was brought by the leaders themselves, because this somersault of policies goes to entrench the trust deficit that you have. If the state governors were the ones that came up with this register, and then they're telling us that this same register is faulty, that means you are telling us everything you did before now was a lie. It means you misled whatever body was working with you. That's what you're basically telling us. So we have to question, how did you come about these names in the first place? Now, what methodologies would you use in coming up with the new names? Are you telling us that the vulnerable and the poorest report that were in this register are no longer poor? Or what methodology did you use in the first place to come up with this name? So these things have been recurring over time, and then you have a people who are looking at this thing, and you keep entrenching this trust deficit in them over time, and then you can't blame the people. This is what they see their leaders do. They see them go one way one time, then the other time they're going another way, which is a dissonance in what they did the first time. So this keeps reiterating their belief that the people governing them can't be trusted. And I hope this time around that the governors get it right, or they seemingly get it right, so that the people can be trusted, because Nigerians have questioned the names on the list, and they said, who are these people? Where did you meet them? How did you come about them? And with the governors telling us that this list is now faulty, I think it just goes to entrench their belief.
Okay, thank you so much, Mobolaji. We've been listening to the voice of Mobolaji, a financial crime analyst, all speaking to us from United Kingdom. All right. Okay, so back to Xavier Robert. It's good to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much, Rachel. It's good to be here. Of course, we will be having a lot of interesting times apart from today.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so honestly, looking at the issue of National Social Register, and of course the fact that these are one of the strong procedures, of course, or should I say yardstick that should be used in measuring how to get to the most vulnerable Nigerians, and we are talking about it being faulty. And of course the NEC, the National Economic Council, has even faulted it, you know, and proposed the implementation of cash transfer programs to states based on their social registers, and of course cash reward policy as well. So it now brings a big question as to who do we trust, or what do we trust? So it still boils down to the trust issue we talked about.
You can imagine that, Rachel, that the body that we're supposed to be relying on for credible data is now coming out to tell us that no, the data collated is no longer trustworthy. And then how do we even get out of this maze as a country, especially when it comes to not having a working national register, a comprehensive register that we get to reach out to?
I think we just shift the discussion to another there. So, okay, thank you so much to the people who stayed glued on our TV, Spectrum TV. It's been the program, The Law of the People and Governance, here on Spectrum Television. And of course, we return to your screen again tomorrow. Thank you so much, Xavier Robert. My co-host has been Xavier Robert, and my name is Rachel David Watts. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and thank you, viewers. See you tomorrow.
Well, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. Good evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye-bye.